Welcome to the man who kept dying. Vincent, what happened to the shirts and the waistcoats you were wearing before? Well, they may come back. For the time being, I'm enjoying being a bit more casual, or dressing a bit more casual. Today's video, as you would have already read from the title and the caption, is about reincarnation. What a concept, what a topic, what a notion. And I really debated how to wrap up the series of concepts that I'm going through in the novel The Man Who Kept Dying. I debated between doing a video about time or reincarnation. And I want to end by talking about reincarnation, time and enlightenment in that specific order. Especially around time, it's difficult to explore the notion of the illusion of time without first introducing the notion of reincarnation. Also, it's difficult to introduce the notion of reincarnation without mentioning enlightenment and what it is. You could consider this video as part one of a three-part series that are going to cover incarnation, time and enlightenment. The notion of incarnation is a very interesting one for me personally. Having been raised in a Western culture, it is not something I was very familiar with. However, when I was living in the UK, I remember once asking Indian friends what their view was about reincarnation. For them, the notion of reincarnation is something that is embedded into their cultural beliefs and their religious beliefs. The first time I was actually introduced to the concept or the notion of reincarnation was probably when I was around the age of 5 to 6 years old. And I'm not too sure if I read something about it or if I heard it mentioned somewhere. I just recall having that conversation with my mother. And it was at the time we were living in Africa. I remember being in the kitchen and she explained to me what reincarnation was. Essentially, the fact that once you have finished your lifetime as whomever you are, so for me that would be as Vincent, then I could come back on Earth either as a human or as a different life form. And as a kid, I absolutely loved the idea of coming back, but not as a human. I thought, like, that's great. Next lifetime, I'm going to be a lion or a tiger or a bear or an eagle, something cool. But coming back as a human? Really? Nah, I don't want to do that. So that was the first time I heard about reincarnation. Fast forward almost 3 decades. And after the remembrance of my near-death experience, and I started to uncover more and more about the spirit world, the potential nature of reality and so on, I of course did research about reincarnation. And again, at the time, it was not something I was very comfortable with. And the reason was simple. Ever since I'm a kid, I've never really been a fan of life on this planet. And mostly I've got nothing to complain about my life. But it's like I've never really gelled with the vibration of the planet, the fact that we have conflicts all the time, the nature of the economics, education. I mean, there are so many concepts, even at a very young age, that I would dislike. So taking a deep dive into the notion of reincarnation was quite an exercise for me, especially considering that my near-death experience had actually alleviated my fear of death. And I was then very comfortable with the idea that that's great, consciousness survives your human body, which means that the day I die, then my consciousness still exists, I just move to a different realm, and it seems like everything in this realm is nicer. But as I did some research into reincarnation, I discovered with horror that there was something called the wheel of reincarnation. And that, no, Vincent, you would not come back as a lion or as a tiger, but actually you would have to come back as a human, over and over and over again, until you reach such a point that you have such an understanding and enlightenment, perhaps, that you may not have to come back. But essentially, that's the only game in town, there's nothing else to do, you will come back. Just reading that made me feel pretty bad. I didn't want to have to come back for another lifetime on this stupid planet. Sorry, planet Earth. It is beautiful at times, but it is quite tiring most of the times for me. At least that was the case back in the days, around 2018, 2019, when I was doing that research on reincarnation. Of course, I was very interested in knowing if there was a way of not reincarnate. What changed my mind about reincarnation was when I did my first hypnosis session. During that hypnosis session, I saw past lives of mine. Those past lives were not human. And that in itself helped me with the concept of having multiple lives, because I saw a couple of lives where I was living in alien civilizations, and the details of those lives were so specific that even in my wildest dreams, or if I were to really go into depth of my imagination, I would have never been able to come up with such precise details. And in a way, it made me giggle a little bit about the fact that, well, maybe if we have to come back, we do not have to come back as humans all the time. We can come back as different life forms on different planets, in different galaxies, with different parameters. So that would actually be a lot cooler and nicer than being a human. That was before I understood that actually being human is the pinnacle of any experience you can do in the physical plane. But back to the hypnosis session. I did not see any human life, whereas I know many people who've done these QHHT sessions, they would have seen human lives. So at the time I was thinking, well, perhaps it is my first human life, and that's why I'm not really liking or gelling with the vibration of planet Earth, and that's why I don't want to come back for another lifetime. But deep down there was something within me that quite did not resonate with the fact that it could be my first life. I felt that I had a bit too much experience about life, that deep down I knew how to find my way into life, that I was not lost, and that I had those intuitions and those instincts about when to do things and where to go, and that whenever I was following them, things were unfolding in a great flow for me. So it was at the time also, I was doing a lot of meditation, and during those meditations I was calling forth my higher self. So in a way you could label it your soul, or the part of you that resides on a spirit plane, and that in a way has a better view of all its lifetimes. And I remember saying like, well, when we did the hypnosis session, you did not mention any human lifetimes of mine. Was that on purpose? And the answer from the higher self came and said, yes, it was, because you were not prepared to see them yet. I replied, okay, well, in that case, I'm not sure I'm still prepared to remember all of them, because does it really matter? But the fact is, can you at least tell me how many lives I've lived as a human? And the answer came instantly, and it was like, sure, 1,156. I was in shock. I said, that many? And I seem to remember none of them. I've later learned that the average number of lifetimes for a human on this planet would be between 300 and 400. And yes, there are people who've gone like past 1,000, not that many, and a lot of people who are just below 100 lifetimes. So by then, I had to accept that potentially I was living my 1,157th lifetime on this planet. As a human, of course. But at least the hypnosis session plus that information from our higher self in a way helped me to accept that, yes, we do come back. And yes, we've lived multiple lives. And that acceptation made me realize a few funny points about the potential concept of reincarnation. The first one being that ever since I'm a young kid, as I've said earlier in the video, I don't understand conflict. I don't understand why we have wars. I don't understand why we argue. I don't understand why people are cause fighting all the time. However, and if it is true that I've lived more than 1,000 lifetimes, well, I've been a man, I've been a woman, I've been every culture, I've lived in every period of time. My religious belief has probably explored all possible religions on this planet. I've lived on every continent and in every country, and I've spoken multiple languages and so on, which in a way has to make me giggle, because if we were to remember that we've all had past lives and that we've all experienced different cultures, different religions, different genders, different levels of education and so on, and different levels of wealth, then why would there be racism? Why would there be conflicts? Why would there be war? Why would there be people fighting for causes all the time? Because take the example of racism, which I've never been able to conceptualize how people are able to be racist. If you go beyond the skin, we all have the same muscular system, the same digestive system, the same musculoskeletal system, and so on. So our human bodies are all the same. But say if you were to take someone who's racist, chances are that person who's racist towards a specific group of people, or a specific culture, or a specific religion, they've been that religion before, they've been that culture before, they've been that specific group before. So in a way, the point is moot. It makes absolutely no sense. Because how can you have a dislike of something that you used to be? And this raises another question, which is, why do we forget in the first place if we've lived all these lives? Well, I think there's a purpose to that. And this is going to tie it a bit with the notion of time. So imagine that on the other side, on the spiritual side, you are eternal. You exist in no time. The experience you want to give yourself, very naturally, would be, I want to experience what it's like to be temporal, or to have a start and an end to a story that I'm going to create. And in a way, you could draw a parallel with some of us humans wanting to, or having the desire to be immortal, which is something else that has always questioned me. Why would you want to be immortal? But I think our desire as humans to be immortal is actually stemming from the fact that deep down we remember that we are immortal, or that we exist in no time on the other side. And the reason why you would not remember all your past lives is actually to serve the purpose of really embedding you into the experience. So for example, I, as Vincent Olivier, I've gone through the experience of facing death multiple times, fearing death, having a near-death experience, and being at peace with the concept of death. I also went through the experience of writing a novel, and then doing the promotion of this novel, then being interviewed on podcast, and then radio, TV, and so on. Would it be really useful for me to remember all my past lives? And the fact that maybe, or certainly in some of those lives, I've been a barbarian, I've been an abuser, I've been a dictator, and also I've been a victim, I've been abused. And all those things, it probably would take me a tremendous amount of time to integrate and to live with those experiences. So this is why we probably don't remember. However, if you really feel through meditation, through your dreams, through different activities, whereas it's hypnosis, channeling, and so on, if you feel into your past lives, you can bring back some elements of them. So I could share that I was in the military in the 40s and 50s in the Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico area. And again, how do I know that? I have no proof of it, but it is just an inner knowingness, because I do have images that are flashing of this time as if I had lived there. And there are things like that that could come back to you. I did a channeling session in which I was told that I was a prominent figure during the French Revolution as well. And what is surprising is I've got no particular interest in that French Revolution era. So I guess that's why you remember some lives and you don't remember others. Lastly, it made me realize that because of the illusion of time, which we will cover in the next video, you don't really have past lives. You have lives that are all happening at once, in parallel, if you like. So if you were to decide to come back in your next lifetime, you might want to anchor your consciousness, so to speak, 1,000 years ago, or 1,000 years in the future. It's up to you to decide, but essentially, all lives have already been lived, and you are just experiencing them consciously. Now, I could not conclude this video without mentioning how to not reincarnate ever again. There's a way, indeed, to escape the wheel of reincarnation, although I'm not a big fan of using that language, of using those terms. And that is simply to become enlightened in your lifetime. And what is enlightenment? Put simply, it is to have an awakening moment or an epiphany that life is not 100% what it looks to be, and that your nature is not to be mind and body, but your nature is to be mind, body, and spirit. Once you reunite with that and you reintegrate all the concepts, you can become enlightened. And enlightenment doesn't mean having to be Buddha or having to be Yeshua. There can be a lot of normal people having that aha moment, that realization, and then that integration that leads them into becoming a fully conscious being. Once you reach that stage, there is little point in coming back for another lifetime, unless you really actively and consciously choose to. The reason for this is, and allow me to use the analogy of a video game, once you've completed all the missions, once you've completed all the side missions even, once you've unlocked any trophy, any bonus and so on, what's left to do in the game? And very often, the nature of reincarnation is made as such that there will be one lifetime through which or during which you will remember your true nature. And once you remember that, that's the awakening moment that signals to your soul that there is no need for additional experience. You've done it all, you've been it all. So it's time to end the acting and enjoy that last lifetime. And you, do you believe in reincarnation? Do you have memories of past lives? If you could reincarnate into anything, human, alien, animal, a tree even, what would it be? Let me know. And with that, and until the next video, I say to you, as usual, be conscious, my friends.